Hello, Sabrag. Welcome.
Hello.
Are you with horses? No.
No, no, because today might be a sound day, so I'm little, kind of studio-ish.
Okay. All right. Good to see everybody. Look at us back together.
Wow. Welcome
Yeah,
back, Scott.
I made it for episode three. I've been just traveling so much, and time has been so different for me. It's weird, like how time works, because I love that you coined this phrase, Hilda, quantum arc, because it is so not a line and it is so not linear. It is bizarre how much it bends and warps, and it depends on your experience. When we were kids, it seems like we could spend forever outside, and then now it seems like an hour goes by in a blink of an eye. But there's like chapters and phases of our lives that feel like centuries. I mean, it's so weird when we get into it.
No, you're totally right. And you know what's interesting is my kids, I mean my oldest especially, who's a freshman now, and she will tell me how she feels time is flying. And I look back and I'm like, I never as a kid thought time was flying. It was like the day went on and on and on, right? An 8-hour day at school might as well have been a whole week. And I think it's fascinating. She said it for a couple of years. But I do feel like there is a major shift in how we perceive time, so to speak. And then, of course, there are the other shifts, which I don't think we're fully aware of the magnitude of what those actually are. You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
I
know,
think a big theme that I love to discuss with you guys is about this idea of we are so much more powerful than we have been told. And so much of our education system and basically every institution that's out there has tried to mold us to conform and fit into some kind of like box that is convenient for them because they profit off it, they get more powerful off of it, and they get to control us in a way that allows them to continue the thing that they think is benefiting them. Of course, the big trick is, and the big twist in the plot is it's actually not benefiting them. It's making them more sick and more diseased and more dependent on a system that is in perpetual chase mode, in perpetual scarcity mode, in perpetual non-abundance mode, in perpetual fear mode. So that's where this idea of compassion comes in, because you're like, wow, so these people are like evil and they're stuck in this system that's conforming us to become these little robots for them. And then they're winning this game, but then at the end of the day, what are they winning? I even think of this idea of like, what did the British win when they won America and then they got the land of America, right? What did they win, right? So they came in, they slaughtered all these Native Americans, they took all of their, resources, land, all that stuff. What did they win? They won a, you know, generations after generations long trauma and healing process and uh so much karma and so much baggage that you wonder what is it that the people or the deep state or all these whatever we call them, the owner class, what are they winning, what are they gaining from all of these games that we feel them trying to perpetuate and impose upon us?
well, I think it's energy. I think it all comes down to energy. I mean, photons and frequency, we know in the quantum physics realm, everything is photons and frequency. So, you know, it's power isn't enough, right? Money isn't enough. Because to your point, I think that's what you're saying is like they acquired the land, they acquired dominance, they acquired power, they acquired resources, but then with that comes all this karma, all this baggage, all this trauma. And I think that's where you hit the node that I felt instantly when you said that, because that is the answer. Our trauma and our fear emits a frequency that gives them fuel. And I think that, I don't understand this completely. I don't think I know, Sabrag, we don't get this, right? So it's hard for us to make sense of something that isn't a frequency alignment for us. But I've done a lot of past life regression and I've gone back in time and I've seen back in time. I've seen the or experienced and relived aspects of the Middle Ages as a victim, right? Not as a perpetrator. And so you can feel this in a moment of fear, and I'm sure everybody can relate to this from a nightmare from childhood or being, jump scared or whatever. But the energy, that surge of energy that occurs within us, is incredibly potent. And it almost serves, I believe, as a food for the controllers, whoever they are, because it doesn't make sense, the rest of it. Like you can say,
Yeah.
follow the money, right? Like, follow the money to where? It's the leprechaun in the pot of gold. What is their pot of gold? I really believe it's frequency.
I think you're right. And Sabrag, I want to hear you talk before I respond to that if you're ready. Otherwise, I do have a lot to say about that.
Um, I just go ahead. I can say something, but you're like on the edge of your seat, ready to say. So just go for it,
Well,
and
I
then I'll chime
agree.
in later.
I so agree, Hilda, and I think that energy is the game because what I've come to see in my own experience of meditation and dealing with these forces that are hard to describe with English language because everything is a loaded word. Like if you say demon forces, if you say angelic forces, already you're starting to think, oh my God, Bible stuff and Christianity and Catholicism, like light and dark. Then you start thinking Star Wars. But if you can try your best to just like really understand this idea of like darkness and light or evil and good, what I've come to understand is like there's this demonic force, this dark force, that what those forces are things, entities, consciousness, whatever, parts of our consciousness that are just like us, same thing. But they choose, because we get some elements of free will in this little game or simulation we're in, to not bow to their own inner light, to their own inner wisdom, to their own inner divinity. And when they make that choice, they have to produce their own light and energy. And how do they do that? They have to like pretend to be their own gods. They have to like say, well, fuck my own inner light. I'm not going to listen to it. It's bullshit. So then they have to go find light outside of themselves. And they find that in all sorts of demonic rituals or weird things that we don't understand. Like, what are they doing? Why are they like sacrificing babies and dancing around them and drinking their blood? Like, what is that? Like, what? Why aren't they just going inward in a nice peaceful meadow and listening to birds chirp or something and like emanating this love and this light that we already are equipped with? And the answer is what you're talking about. When they deny their own inner light, they have to find it outwards. And I'm not saying doing demonic force crap gives them light. What it does, though, is gives them energy to perpetuate whatever game that they're playing. The sad reality, though, is it is an endless. It's like a drug, just like they say chasing the dragon with heroin or anything, any of these addictions. Is you are constantly chasing that. So they constantly need to keep filling themselves with this false energy or this non-inner light infinite energy. And that's why they go and do all these weird games that we don't get because they have made a decision. But then the question is like, where did that decision come from? Why can't they come back to the decision of, well, I'm going to bow to my own inner light? And I think the only answer I can come up with is it's too painful and scary for them to do that because then they have to go a long road. They have like, they look at the roads ahead and they're like, well, I could keep doing these bizarre sacrifices of children or whatever it is that they're doing to get their energy. And it's right there, and I have a knife and I have money in my bank account, and I can keep doing that. Or I can turn inwards and face all this demonic darkness that's inside of me, and I can walk this very long, very scary, very mysterious path with no guidance and no understanding of what it is, and it's terrifying. I'll just go there.
Yeah, well said. So, Brog, I'm so curious to hear you chime in here. Take the mic.
Um, yeah, I think the solution is to start living inside out. And I'm drinking a cup of coffee right now, and we had discussed this I think on the first podcast of how you can have if you're living an outside in experience. Every day you need more and more coffee for that coffee to give you the same stimulus. First, I remember I cut out coffee for a while and I brought it back on, and there's even a sip would like drive me crazy, like a sip of coffee. And then it was like, a half a cup and then a cup and then a big cup and all of that stuff. And it just keeps getting to a point where then you just need coffee just to kind of not have a headache in the morning. And you don't even feel any difference. There's no buzz, there's no anything. But inside out living is you hold the cup, you sense your inner light, your inner joy, and your spirit, and you just see the coffee as an expression of creativity, an expression of your joy, expression of your love. It's especially potent if you're sharing it with somebody. So if you're having a cup of coffee with somebody you love, somebody that you care for, then that coffee is more like a connection point, soul to soul, in which case we become, alive and vibrant and present with each other. And then it's not about being stimulated from the outside and getting a buzz. It's more of an expressiveness, of a sense of creativity. And I think that's what's happened is we have an outside in orientation as opposed to an inside out orientation.
So beautifully said. Does it remind any of you of like the Japanese tea parties, right? When you have these
Mm.
ceremonies, it is exactly that. It's holding the presence together while experiencing this, lovely aromatic and warmth and flavors and all that. And it's the same concept when you have sake, right? At a Japanese restaurant, you're supposed to pour each other's cup, and it's not about catching the buzz. It's about being present and embracing the flavors and the notes and all of the things that sake brings out in the ginger and the wasabi and the flavors of the food. But I think you're spot on, and this is what I think you, Scott, what you shared earlier today as well with us on our WhatsApp chat. This that the evil doers want us they want to keep us locked in this outside in experience where we are constantly externalizing everything from the cup of coffee to the gin and tonic to the fast food to now, which terrifies me, and I don't use that word lightly, but the technology world that we are all being dragged into willingly and unwillingly from the computers that everybody's now since COVID, right? We're all on our computers. So we have the potential of having these incredibly inward experiences as everybody was driven inside. But we were driven inside, externalizing the outside world, not coming inward. Hey, let's take this moment of mystery, not knowing what's going on in the world, and let's all meditate and imagine a healthy world and get together with your children and everybody. This is an opportunity for you all to homeschool. Like, no, that's not what our governments told us to do.
Mm.
They pushed us onto tablets. They made us dependent on social media, on computerized digital learning, and then snuck in artificial intelligence. And so here we are at this turning point where, well, I should say choice point really is a better, I think, term. What are we okay with? To what extent are we okay with externalizing our experiences? Because if we continue on this trajectory of externalization, of God, I've had a bad day, I need a glass of wine, or I feel like shit, I'm going to smoke some weed. Like, and I'm not judging anyone. I mean, God, I've made that choice. I've opted into that umpteen times, countless times in my lifetime. But if we continue to do that, it's going to be at a point, I mean, by 2030, by 2028, maybe even, as things are accelerating so much, that we no longer have the opportunity to reclaim our sovereignty, to remember who we truly are as a human race, which I have believed for many, many years on my, I'll say, 25-year long journey of real conscious journey of awakening, self-realizing, inner standing, that the divine is absolutely within us. And not only is it within us, when we realize just how divine we are, we start activating those dormant DNA strands, which I really believe we had 12. I mean, I'm just going to keep repeating that. I really believe that we had so much more potential within our genetic constitution, in our blood, in our cells. And when we start going inward more and shutting down this externalizing experience of the world around us, and we start experiencing the world within us, we awaken. And there's no stopping that. And that is exactly why I got shut down on TikTok. And I'm not, I mean, I'm banned without a warning, without a strike. It was so weird. I just like went
Yep.
to go click on a video and it's like, nope, you no longer have an account.
Exactly. Because they're going to keep trying to pretend to be godlike and trying to be all seeing, all doing, all knowing. They're going to keep trying that. That's why they're sucking in all the data. They're trying to accumulate a lot of the data in ways that they can categorize and then add different control mechanisms so that they can play God, but they can't ever be God. That's the fun part. So one thing I would say about being terrified is never be terrified, because like the thing is they can never take, look, what does it say in the Bible? Like no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And that the devil is already a defeated foe. And uh all of that's true. All of that's true. The story's already written, it's already done. But we're in the play, and the play was in some capacity chosen by us, maybe to understand our own beingness and our own conscious ways and our own. I mean, the best way to see the light is to recognize the dark, right? And you can see the light the brightest when you are in a darker space. So maybe a lot of this was an intentional play for us to kind of find that. So never be terrified. None of it's all a joke at the end. So don't be too worried, but worry enough so that you can keep enjoying the play. But I was as you guys were talking,
Yeah.
there was a couple of words that came to mind. The first word is communion. So you said, Sabrog, sharing the cup of coffee with a friend, right? Then Hilda, you connected that to the tea ceremony, which I last time I did a tea ceremony, I was crying. It was the most beautiful experience because it brought me back into communion with not just the people I was doing it with, but the tea itself. Because there's a difference between consuming, because there's the con words and there's the com words, com and the con. Con words are like not as nice, but even though it's a con means with, but calm words are amazing, like communion, community, communication. Um, those words I think are coming up for me right now because when I think about my favorite experiences with any kind of substance that's outside of me, I think of mushrooms. I think of mushrooms because for some reason with me, they really work well. And I always think of them as being something I commune with. Like I talk with them, I have a relationship with them. I actually like intentionally enter in an experience with them. I don't like say, I'm gonna take some and then like I'll see what happens. I don't know. It's like I actually like want them to inform me of things and like be like a friend. They were like a friend. There they are. They're right there in the world, just like I'm in the world. Are they curious about the world? Are they wondering things that I'm wondering? Can we commune about that? And same thing with the coffee. I think the coffee is very much alive and wants to commune with you and do an intentional relational thing with you, which is to stimulate parts of your body that maybe you yourself couldn't do, just like a friend would. Just like a friend who has really interesting insight would activate those neurons. The coffee can do the same thing. Like, look what I can do. Look at my party trick. Okay, that's what caffeine's saying, or coffee, right? And mushrooms are like, check out my party trick. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. And it's just the same way if a friend walked in and showed you how they could juggle. You would get activated. You'd be like, that's super cool. And then you talk to the friend, where'd you learn to juggle? Let me know more about you. That's the same thing you're doing, or I think properly would be to do with coffee, with mushrooms, with anything, is to commune with them and have a relationship with them, not depend on them, not like you were saying, Sabrog, the opposite of communion. You were saying, oh my God, like I have a headache unless I drink coffee. That's because you changed your relationship. Suddenly, that's like saying, I don't feel happy unless my friend shows up and starts juggling and smiling and laughing in front of me. It's like, oh my God, I've become dependent on that friend doing a juggling show for me. Like, there's a diff, there's a diff, there's a difference. There's a difference. So I think the idea is communion. And what are these evil forces trying to do? They really want us to separate. Of course they do, because divide and conquer is that old known phrase that it works. It completely works. It's like you make people start fighting each other and thinking that they're so different and that they aren't special and that they need the pharmaceutical industry to heal and they need all these things that big institutions that profit off of it are offering. We're so good. You guys can't talk without Zoom. You can't talk across the continents to Sabrag. That's not possible. You need technology to do that. That is insulting to our divine beings that we are. And it's the more if we don't commune with these things and say, wow, I'm going to use you right now because this is the only way I know how to, and I appreciate you and thank you, and have that gratitude with this machine and this Zoom and whatever, your cell phone, you then do the same thing we're talking about, which doesn't help, which is you depend on it. Oh my God, I can never talk to Sabrag unless I have my laptop. And what does that do? That makes us dependent and it makes us have that headache when we don't have it type of feeling. So it's like, wait, if all of the power grid went down, I can never talk to Sabrag again. That's actually not true. I'm starting to wake up to none of that's true. I'm starting to wake up to everything we've been told by these institutions, by these governments, by these banks, by all these bad forces out there are trying to squeeze us into this little defined thing that needs them and needs all this stuff in order to do the things that we were like endowed by our creator to do without them. We don't need any of that shit. In fact, all that shit is actually hurting us. I don't think society has a lot to offer you. I really don't. I think society has a nice business model and it's fun because it's cool to fly in airplanes. Like that's fun. I consider it a really fun side quest, cool stuff, but it doesn't have a lot to offer you. It's like little fun, kind of cute things, but it doesn't, like iPhones are cute and cool and whatever. And so are airplanes and so is whatever. There's a lot of cool, cute things that society can do, but it's not a lot. I really don't think it's a lot that it offers you. I think it poisons you and hurts you way more than it offers you something.
This reminds me so much of this meme I saw a couple weeks ago. And it was so funny. It's this like totally strung out lady. Her hair is everywhere. She's got a, Starbucks coffee in her hand. It's a cartoon. And I don't know, if it's a cigarette or a spliff or whatever hanging out of her mouth. And she's yelling at a woman on a farm holding her two children on her lap, saying, but if you homeschool them, they're not going to be socialized and they'll never fit into society. And the mother's just calm holding her children. And is that a problem? Like as this woman, right? But the other thing you said that reminded me of there's a book called Mutant Messages Down Under. And it's about a woman who goes to, or she's invited to walk about with the Aborigines in Australia. And it's fascinating because I think there's quite a lot of truth in this, in her, account of what she experienced. But then she interjects some myth as well and some folklore from their tradition. So it's beautiful because I love that kind of book where it's like based on truth, but there's like little pearls that maybe didn't happen to her, but could be possible. And one of the things that happened was when she was starting her journey with them. And of course, she had no sunscreen. She was practically stripped down naked, no shoes. I mean, she became one of them and she had to do as they do and learn their ways. And they just walk and they don't talk, but yet they're communicating the entire time. And one of the leaders read her thoughts and started answering her questions for her. And she stopped in her tracks, like, how did you know what I was thinking? And he said, because it's telepathy and this is how we communicate. You would notice telepathy, we just notice communication. And she said back at the time when she wrote the book, well, we have to put a quarter in a phone and press a bunch of buttons and then put the phone to our ear, and call somebody in China. You're saying you can do that with any human anywhere? So that's just what it reminded me of. And these are real Indigenous people living this way, Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And Sabrag, please cut me off if you have something to add here. But I read a book that was. Do you want to talk? Because
I'm enjoying this so much. I mean, I could say something, but just keep going. I love it.
Oh man. There's a book from the Sikh community, and it's by a guy named Guru Singh, and he wrote a book called Buried Treasures. And Hilda, he went to a Native American community that he ended up getting to for some bizarre reasons. I mean, it was so weird. He was a musician. He was even playing with Janis Joplin. It was back in those days, and suddenly he got like intertwined with these Native Americans who happened to be in the city, and they brought him out to their community, and they, like you just said, 100% were all communicating without words. They were just using telepathy. It's real. And something that they did that I think we also have lost in society, because I think we had a lot of these things, and I think we continue to lose them as these powerful people in the game that we currently are playing in society are perpetuating and pushing on us. Because as we continue to play this game, which I can go into my whole thoughts about banks and how they're controlling everything and all that shit. Uh, they get more powerful in this game we're allowing ourselves to play in. So they are continually pushing this stuff on us because they're getting more powerful in this game. But before they were this powerful, we did have a lot more connection to these things. And one of those things was what they did in this Native American tribe that Guru Singh went to, which is called a rite of passage. And so we still have echoes of what a rite of passage are in our current society, and we call them a quinceañera, or we call them a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah. And those are like echoes of what they were. But the true thing of what those things were this idea of like you're moving from this youthful, playful joy into trying to understand what it means to enter into adulthood, where you have real trials and real tribulations. And how do you depend on your inner knowingness and your inner wisdom and your deep guidance, your intuition? How do you depend on that to calmly navigate these rough seas and these storms that will inevitably hit you? And the elders, Hilda Elder, they knew this stuff. They knew this stuff, and they tried to pass on this wisdom. And so today we're just filled with like knowledge. We're not filled with wisdom, right? We just have tons of knowledge. Like I can find out, how much it rains in wherever in Guatemala, like, like cool. Okay. But that's not wisdom. Like the wisdom that you get from these rites of passages are so, so important, but we've lost them. So Guru Singh, if you go pick up that book, he goes through a million of them. And there's two that really stick out in my mind, but I'll just mention one. One, which was like the final trial, was they would have him go through this dark cave where he couldn't see anything. You could barely hear anything. So none of your senses work. And he would go practice the path with light. And then the final trial is go through the passage all without light. So depend on your practice and your stillness and your abilities to go from one end of the cave to the other without depending on the fire for light and all that stuff. And his descriptions of going through that cave, it even gives me chills thinking about it, is so deep because it's really part of the human experience, like that dark cave idea, going into the dark forest. Because even though he had practiced it, it still brought up so many things. Like time, suddenly he couldn't keep track of. Suddenly he'd have hallucinations that he really felt were real. All of his deepest fears were manifesting because when you're in pure blackness, you start to see things. And so he describes it really well and how terrifying it was. But these types of things are nice, safe, packaged up things that allow us to go through what they call rites of passage so that you can be prepared for when you really do enter the dark forest and you're not in the safety of this little trial. Because, of course, this little trial is a little cave, and if he was lost for too long, they would come find him and he'd be safe. But that's the idea of the rite of passage, is to practice these real scary things in life, these real things that we completely ignore in society, like death. Not only do we ignore death, we like amplify the opposite of death, youth. So it's like all we do is make death seem scary, bad, and we just ignore it. Ignore it. Live in denial. Death isn't happening. Keep putting Botox in your face. Keep whatever it is, because you want to be youthful. Look at the billboards. It's all young people, right? So the message is like, death is not real. We don't care about it until the last day. And you're like, oh my God, I have all these like regrets and I want to like cry in hospice. And you're talking to this nurse who doesn't know you, but they have compassionate hearts. So they're like angels on earth, these nurses. But so Instead of that, how about prepare for death? Because it's part of the human experience. Wonderful. Okay, cool. So like what are some other options of what death is? Is it a new chapter, or like, come up with stuff and really work through it. Don't depend on these fragmented religions and all these conflicting stories. Like let's all come together and like really focus on these things and bring back these ideas of rites of passages so that we can really go deep into this experience of what we are and wake up all this amazing stuff like self-healing. So I don't even think you have to die if you really don't want to. But I think death is great, actually, and I think we are meant to eventually when we're supposed to. But I think like you are able to do anything. You are so powerful. That's what they're mostly afraid of. That's what these controllers are mostly afraid of. You literally could change the entire timeline, the entire planet. You could completely stop all wars like that. You could lift all weapons into the sun and burn them away. You can do it all. I think it's all possible. I think they really don't want us knowing that.
100% agree with you. I couldn't agree more. And that's the thing, that's why they need to suppress us, because people are awakening, and this awakening is underway, and there is no stopping it. There are the question is how many are going to awaken, and this is where what's the term woke, awake, awakening. It's become quite convoluted, and there's a lot of grayness in this terminology at this point, and it's something. I was thinking about this morning. We've now made an effort to have our coffee in bed 5 o'clock when the youngest one wakes up, and I'm still nursing him. So it's this sweet quietness. The dogs are in the bed, and it's dark out, and we're no phones. We don't talk. We just commune with ourselves, our heart space, our collective little gathering in the bed, and all these wonderful enlightening downloads happen, which is, I think, what's supposed to happen for us every day when we wake up and before we go to bed. It's these lucid, enlightening moments that connect us deeper within. But anyway, so I was thinking about how all these people are like, I'm awake, I'm waking up. And what's waking them up is this chasing their tail in the conspiracy world. It's like, oh, well, I've woken up to 9/11. I've woken up to, whatever it is, insert endless conspiracy theories, which, hey, I love a good conspiracy, and I have been down every rabbit hole there possibly is, and used to be very proud wearing my tinfoil crown until recently when I really realized that it is actually the opposite of being awake. Because what is happening is you're close looping yourself in the world of distractions. And while I think it can contribute to, the stages of waking up, it's exactly what you're talking about, going in the cave of darkness and finding the inner light to find your way. That is what no one is doing. I mean, I don't know anyone that's doing that. I've only read about it in the Colombian Earth Keepers, who at 3 years old, from I think this is the story, and I know the monks in Asia as well go through a similar process where at the age of 3 years old, which I mean literally feels like my heart breaks if I even think about my kids willingly, I mean giving my kids to God at 3 years old to live in a cave until they're 18. But that's exactly what the wisdom keepers across the planet and a lot of these, I'm going to say, harmonic resonance points on our planet, because this is in Peru, this is Colombia, this is in, the Andes and then the Tibetan Himalayan mountains. It's all over the world. And I think there are these nodes where these incredible awakening beings have been trying to heal this planet and inspire humanity's awakening through this journey in the cave. I'm so glad you brought that into the light, Scott.
I want to, there's an image that's coming to my head as you all are talking about this. First of all, I just want to interject on a more general note before getting specific, is I just love talking with you both and being here. I get so high. I've been noticing this last couple of podcasts. So I just like I feel like I'm plugging into you both, and it's just this like whole these like multi-dimensional expansion that's happened. And like Scott, when you're talking about your mushroom trips, and I just completely go there with you, Hilda, when you're talking about your communion with the light beings and all that, I go just completely go there. It's just so fun to journey with you both and to experience these experiences that I wouldn't have on my own. I'm sitting here silent, but I'm just completely with you and enjoying the heck out of it. So thank you. um, let's see. So what's coming to me, the image that's coming to me about the notion of the cave is in certain Eastern philosophies. They describe an architecture of consciousness, and the basic structure is, we have our sort of perceived three-dimensional reality. Sort of below that, you could say, would be the dream world, and you wake up into the sort of physical reality, and then you can just sort of keep waking up through these architectural kind of structures of consciousness. And every time that someone wakes up, if you don't know any better, you think that's the top. And so when some people will see the heavens, or see divine light, they think, okay, I've gotten to heaven. But then you just keep meditating there, and then you can open up further. And so the basic structures, largely as described in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib of the Sikhs and other traditions as well, is we have this world, the 3D world. You wake up to the astral world, which is the realm of sense perception and creativity. Then you can wake up to the causal world, which is essentially the essential concepts behind all all forms and all things. And then you can get to sort of what's called the universal mind at the top of the causal plane, is what they say. And the vast majority of spiritual seekers, when they get there, they think they've achieved enlightenment, universal consciousness, soul consciousness, or whatever. And apparently, a spiritual seeker can get there alone. Like, you can meditate, you can have your mantra, you can just go in your cave or just meditate on it. And you can get to the top, and you think, okay, I'm enlightened. But what I think this cave that you're talking about, Scott, that that in the book about, from Guru Singh, and all this sort of the notion of the cave and the sort of this eternal darkness that there's no way of getting through. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. When I'll try and find it maybe on my phone or something later. But once you get past the universal mind, then there's this if you keep meditating, there's like basically an endless darkness, like just a complete void. Like it's just a cave of endless, infinite darkness. And how do you? So you wake up into that. It's like, well, how do you get through that? Like, where do I even go? Because it's dark. There's no direction. There's no anything. It's just, you're just swimming in the infinite void. And what the image that came to mind recently, which is really interesting, is as a social media video that I saw. It was probably a TikTok or something like that, when they talk about a study with rats. And they just, it's kind of cruel, but they put a rat in just like a tub of water, and if a rat has no experience of being in a tub of water, it will just try and swim, and it'll just drown in about 15 minutes. But if they are swimming, and then just before drowning, the researcher pulls them out, and they say, "Oh, I can be rescued." Then when they put them back in the next time, I forget the amount of time it was. Maybe you've seen the video. Something like, it's like almost like 2 days or something. It's a crazy amount of time that they will just keep swimming, because they'll just know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And so, in the spiritual traditions, and Sant Mat, and the Sikh traditions, and I'm sure there's other things. It's definitely kind of like this, Scott, what you're talking about in these native traditions. Whereas in the Eastern tradition, they'll say at the there's if you have a relationship with a Satguru, which is a true being of love, someone who is living permanently in that state beyond, at the end of the cave, the other side, whose just consciousness is perpetually there, then you can actually be pulled by pure love of the Satguru to the other side. So it is that pull, and you cannot get to the other side of this cave without the pull of true love. And so, just the whole time you guys were talking about this, I was just thinking about that rat, just knowing at the end of that tunnel there will be someone to rescue me. And so I think That's yeah, that's just what came to mind is these rats like swimming, knowing
Yeah.
that there's hope at the end of the tunnel. And if you don't have that, you're gonna die like very fast.
That's a beautiful analogy. Thank you, Sabrag. And that is exactly right. And I would say that that someone is you, but we don't like thinking of that way because it feels lonely and it feels scary. Like, what do you mean it's me? Everything's me. Everything's a reflection of me. This whole universe is me. God is me. I am God. That's a scary, overwhelming feeling for humans because we are living in a world that there's a lot of inventions. Okay. So where this light is and this God is and this unity is and where this infinity and you said infinite light or infinite darkness. To me, that's just like saying infinity and zero. That's where infinity and zero are really the same thing. Where that is, there's no such thing as time, loneliness, pain. All those things were invented in this thing we're in right now. So when we go to these thought experiments, we're using our logical linear brains. Our brains are really built for logical linear time. That's what they're built for. That's why it's so important to bring your consciousness into the heart or other parts of your body or even outside of your body if you really want to experiment in this realm of outside the box thinking. Like, what do you mean zero and infinity can be the exact same thing? What do you mean, like, there's parts of my internal body that are quantum tunneling to each other? Like, how does that work? Like, if there's a wall, they should get blocked, Like, what does that mean? It means logic isn't real. Timelines are not real. They're inventions so that we can play this game that we're in right now. Just like when you're playing a video game, it's all invented and it's cool and it's fun and it's supposed to be a joyful, like a internally joyful experience. Not exactly joyful every moment, of course, because the human body suffers and feels pain. Of course, there's a difference between pain and suffering, and I can go to that. But what I liked about what you said, though, Sabrag, is this idea of faith and hope. And that's what a lot of these religions have come up with, the concept of, which I think is so powerful and important. You need to have the second coming of Jesus. You need to have that idea of the second coming of Jesus is literally the researcher grabbing the rat, because then it makes a people withstand anything, any
Mm.
of these dark forces, these demonic things that are trying to like suppress you and implant you with chips in your brain and tell you that AI is your God. All of that can be superseded by this idea of a second coming. No, 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 no. My creator is going to lift me out of this at any moment. Oh, wait, I am my creator. Oh, wait, I am this universe. Oh, wait, stop this stupid game. I don't like it anymore. You can really hit reset or whatever, change it all. That's the fun part. There is no enemy. I mean, there is no enemy. I mean, they are trying to explain to us in all of these old texts, there is no enemy. There is no enemy. So, what is it in Star Wars when he goes in the dark cave? Luke tries to bring his lightsaber, his weapon, right? Because we love our weapons. It makes us feel like we're in control. Look at all this power, this energy. I can slice anything. Cool. It's really fun in a game. I love video games, as you guys know. And Hilda, we have our thoughts about that. But I think in a simulation and in a game, it's cool. I love slicing stuff. That's fun. I mean, I used to play Fruit Ninja on my phone when the phones first came out. What a fun game. But in real life, it doesn't work like that. In the reality we're really discussing, which is kind of outside of this simulation we're in, you don't need. So when Luke tries to bring that lightsaber into the cave, Yoda says to him, "Where you're going, you don't need that." But he still brings it because he's like, "Oh, so attached to it." No, 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 no. This is how I'm protected. And like Yoda, of course, knows there's a force that's protecting you. This thing is a joke, and that's um, I'll just quickly say I did a VR experience with Star Wars, and it was so freaking cool because you had these like guns and you're like shooting all this stuff, and you're a stormtrooper and you're running through. And they had this at the Third Street Promenade in this VR experience place in Santa Monica, and it was so fun. And I was with my friends, and of course, the first thing you do is you start shooting each other because it's so funny. The little things start hitting, and you're like, ah, okay. Then you go in and you're shooting all these things, and you start to feel powerful. You're like, oh, I'm really taking down all these enemies. But then a Jedi shows up in the game and he just goes like this, whoosh, like that, and your gun, you can't shoot it anymore because he's using the force in this this Star Wars universe that we're talking about. And it really makes it hit you. You're like, wait, these guns are a joke. They are. Weapons are a joke. They're not real. Okay. The true weapon is recognizing you're the power, you're the universe. And so when Luke goes into the cave with the weapon, he uses the weapon against his eternal enemy, okay, his weapon and his enemy, and he slices the head off of his enemy, which is Darth Vader. Okay, what happens? I don't know if you remember the scene, but the helmet he takes off of Darth Vader, and it's Luke. It's his own face. So he sliced his enemy. Cool. Like I said, really fun in a video game. But in this reality, I'm trying to wake us all up to it, or I'm trying to wake up to myself, is that is you. Why'd you create the enemy? For a purpose of a game? Great. Go into the little video game world and shoot little enemies and have a lot of fun. But like in your real life experience, like for you, why do you want an enemy? There's no reason. Unless you really need it. If you need it for this experiment about darkness and all that stuff, create the enemy by all means, but know what you're doing. It's not there.
Well, the ego creates the enemy. I mean, it's all egoic. It's all from the egocentric perspective. But oh gosh, I totally need to rewatch Star Wars. Thank you. And I remember being a kid and get having a different perception of it than now. Of course, it's the case with all the things we read, right? The Lord of the Rings series, The Hobbit, etc. But I almost felt like I understood it when I was a kid on a totally different level. And then my programmed mind through my education shut it all down. So I'm gonna go back and rewatch that.
Yeah,
But you know,
there's a lot of cops and robbers type of crap in there, but there is the deep sense of the force in there.
it's something that strikes, and I mean, and listen, I used to love playing video games too, but I did like Sega Genesis, like Sonic Hedgehog and Alex Kidd and Altered Beast and all those like silly Sega games. And I would love to bring that back because that was really fun. A little bit of a time waste, but it was fun. But when thinking about guns, it just something really struck a chord there because that is exactly why the controllers, make such a big hype over gun control and all these school shootings and all this MK Ultra programming mind control over these children who are going and killing people, and then they're blaming it on video games, which I don't, or on medication. I mean, and all can be true. All of it contributes. But then, and I wonder if you can speak to this, Scott, with your travels to Poland. But years ago, I was told that in Poland, everybody is taught, as many European countries as well, the boys have to go into the military. And in Poland, everybody is trained to use guns. And then everybody has a gun, apparently. Like every household has a gun. So the gun loses its power because if you're going to go rob your neighbor, you better have Jedi skills because your neighbor has been equally trained in using that gun to defend themselves against a perpetrator as you are. So it's like it levels the playing field and it disempowers the weapon and empowers the humans. So I just found that to be interesting. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I haven't tried to rob anyone, so I don't know, but but I can say that this is one of the safest countries I've ever felt. Like it's just super organized, very clean, very like proper. Everybody's following the traffic rules. It's very very organized and clean. There's like no graffiti, anything. It's a really really nice, safe place to be. Almost too much so, where you feel like, where's the wild side? Like. But I think more importantly to your point, whether Poland is like that or not, is I think you're so right, which is stop putting all this power in these things like, oh, the gun or the social media or the video game. It's like those are just like things. And sure, if we are unconscious beings being directed by these demonic force, powerful deep state people, yes, they are used really, really poorly against us. I don't trust, right, the main uh, corporations that society has built to guide my children safely through powerful pieces of technology like game systems, computer technology, internet. I don't trust corporations, but that's because corporations are motivated by profits and all this other crap. So I don't trust them, just like I don't trust that most of the stuff that you get in the supermarket isn't filled with chemicals and crap that they use to spray on for pesticides. So I think it's all poisonous. And like I said, society has very little to offer us. It really does. It's just a game that we opted into, kind of not by choice, however you look at it. And it certainly has its fun little cute things, but it's not going to do the things that we're really looking for. And they might be necessary for some of us. Like I think Hilda, you were saying earlier some other thing about if you like need that for your awakening, then that's okay. I think there's a lot of people out there that sort of need to go through certain things that we have looked at and said, why even go down that route? And that's one of the hardest things about being people who get more spirit guided like us and stuff, is it's really hard to not like want to reach in and lift one of our loved ones out of their little trappings. But that's part of, I think that's one of the hardest parts of being where we're at, is like you have to watch them. They have to like go and make this like dark decision that gave them the hangover, and then this like they got sick for 2 months because of this or that, and it was like so obvious to you. You're like, well, you just walked down that whole path and now you're sitting here crying about it. Well, I could have told you to go this way, but like they like have to. There's some sort of other force that's not driven by humans, that is more something we have to bow to, I think, that is allowing this to happen. See, I do believe, I personally believe in like a God. Like I believe there's a really, really benevolent force out there that's good. Like I'm convinced of that because I've had to hand over everything to that force a lot in my life. And it's worked like magic. Like you're just like, I don't know. I'm totally lost. Please just take this from me. And you go into what I would call prayer, and it works like magic. It's amazing. Like things change just like that, like as if I flipped a switch. And I really think like we like jump timelines and stuff, like time arcs, quantum arcs, because do you guys know about you do, yeah, I'm sure you know this phrase, the Mandela effect, right? You know about that? Yeah.
Hmm.
So one of them, and Hilda, you're from my generation, I think. Do you remember Fruit of the Loom?
Oh, yeah, of
So
course.
do you know the Mandela effect with Fruit of the Loom, or do you not know this one?
I don't know if I think I've heard it, but I don't totally. I mean,
All
I
right.
know.
So
I
this is
know that one. Yeah, I know that
it's
one.
super. Did you grow up with it, Sabrog? Are you that?
Yeah.
You
I'm 83, so
okay?
kind of at, little younger than you both, but
All right.
yes.
Do you remember the logo? See, I remember the logo the way I remember it, which is the way most of the internet remembers it. But the truth in our timeline right now is that it's not the way I remember it, nor all my family, my brother, Hilda, my mom, they all remember it the way I remember it. Of
The
the logo,
cornucopia with the fruit.
it was a fruit and it had a what's called a cornucopia behind
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah, I remember the cornucopia, of course. Everybody.
Everybody remembers the cornucopia. Guess what? Guess what?
No
There's
cornucopia.
no digital record of it. You can't find photos of it. You can't go to a vintage store and buy Fruit of the Loom that has a cornucopia. There is there's an article that you can find online where they went and finally talked to Fruit of the Loom. They said that they never had the cornucopia in their logo. They even showed the patents for the logo. It never existed in this timeline, time arc, whatever, but we all remember it.
Wild.
It's a freaking weird one. And you know what? So
Yeah.
I also think one of the weird rules in this game, at least the one that I'm accepting currently, is that if we do want to do these little quantum leaps, that's funny. There's that show Quantum Leap, which quantum arc, so like we want to do these jumps. I think we have to be prepared to accept those weird things like that. So I think like I'm at the level, if I could like find a measuring stick of what level of like spirituality I'm at, where I can accept bizarre things like the logo changed on Fruit of the Loom. Okay. But I don't think I'm at the level of where New Zealand never existed. Right. Like, so it's like, you gotta like, so I think, like, I think there's some like really dope guru out there who's like living in a cave somewhere who can accept, oh yeah, New Zealand, it never existed. Like that guy exists somewhere because he's super leveled up. But the level I'm at is like that obscure brand I wore as a kid that had like some underwear or whatever. There was a little change in the logo. Like I can accept that. I'm still barely accepting it. I'm talking to you about it right now, but I'm at the level where I'm not going to throw away all of reality and jump right back into the other one just because of a logo change. So I think like there's something to that of this Mandela effect. I think that we collectively have to like be able to accept bizarre little changes like that in order to like do the leap into the things that we want, you know? Which is I don't know. I don't know. That's like kind of one theory. I could be complete as with most of the things we talk about in this, I have no idea. I mean, I accept that I have no idea of like any of this stuff. But it's weird that we all remember that freaking cornucopia. And I'm gonna try to airdrop it so I can share screen and show you what the difference is because it's weird.
What was it? Wasn't it with Nelson Mandela as well?
So
That
that's
people
why they call it the Mandela effect, is because
that
yeah, go ahead.
that story, what that specific story is, some remember him going to prison, right? Or and
Yeah.
then others,
So
yeah,
some remember that he went to prison, and people remember that he died in prison.
exactly.
And others remember that what is the timeline we're in right now, which is that he survived at prison and then became president.
Yes. Which is crazy that there are two entirely different quantum arcs, right?
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
What? That is
So,
possible.
okay, look at
Yeah.
this. All right. So, Fruit of the Loom makes this claim that this was the logo that always existed, just this. Okay. And yet, everyone that I talked to, including my family and just verified with you guys right now, everyone remembers this cornucopia. Everybody remembers that. But Fruit of the Loom makes the claim that that never existed. And the weird thing is, if you go online and you try to search this, there's like two pictures that claim that they're from back then, but they're like only two. There's like one random one of like a banner, and there's like some other random one on the internet. If this really existed, you would assume that people found them in vintage stores, that there was like old commercials from Fruit of the Loom, old magazines, other companies that had clothing, sold these. They would say, "Yeah, here's the packaging. I took a picture back in the '80s, and of course I have it with the." So you'd think there'd be like thousands of examples of the cornucopia, but you go online, you can't find any. And there's just like two. There's like two total, which makes you think like, well, that's weird. Why is everything this? And you can even go find an '80s commercial of Fruit of the Loom where the guy he holds up a package real quick, and he's like wearing a grape outfit, and he just like holds up the package, and it's this logo. It's the not cornucopia one. But all of us remember this cornucopia.
So bizarre. It's funny because I remember hearing about this, but I never really gave it much thought. I never looked at the images like this. It's funny with my dad being 94. I'm like, I'm gonna go raid his closet because I know that he never threw anything out, and I know he used to have Fruit of the Loom and Hanes. So I'm gonna go see if I can dig something up.
Yeah, and please report back to us because it is a very bizarre thing, but I think it's one that we're supposed to accept. I mean, there's a Rick and Morty episode where they constantly have to change universes in that cartoon because he's like always jumping, and one of them they always it's funny if you've never watched it. There's one where they have to totally abandon their universe because another disaster happened, and so he's like they pronounce it Parmesan here. It's not Parmesan. So it's like that's the only difference between that one universe and the others. Everyone calls it Parmesan cheese. And so that's like the one thing that they have to accept. So I think we've done a jump. And the one thing we just have to accept is there was no cornucopia. And what a weird thing, too. Like, I didn't even know what a cornucopia was until I started like looking into all this.
That's so funny. It reminds me of what I keep referencing as like we're, going to be jumping from the third density to the fifth density from 3D to 5D, which I mean, I know people think that's really, really bizarre and just another conspiracy and really out there, but I really believe that's what's happening because that is what's happening with our consciousness expansion. And maybe it's going to be, 3D is planet turmeric and then planet turmeric, because that's another one that you ask so many people. I wonder if like in 20 years there's going to be no R. It was never turmeric. It was just turmeric. But I feel like that's kind of going to be how this shift into this new earth, this new configuration, this parallel experience of reality, because those of us who are waking up to the divinity within us, this inner light, that the only journey is the journey within, because it really is. That's it. We get to co-create with other collaborating awakeners to this truth what the world we want to live in will look like. And I believe that we can make it free of disease and free of conflict and free of lack, and all these concepts that the controllers have kept us in these karmic looping cycles of fear and desperation and trauma, etc. And it really is, the choice point is stay in that realm because it's comfortable, and it comes with football and Netflix and fast food and all these and Amazon and all these conveniences, or we get to create something new where we unhook ourselves, not necessarily detach, but unattach. I like that concept of unattaching to the earthly, worldly comforts, and be willing to go into the inner realm together.
100%, and we have to do it together. And the things that you decide or described are these ideas that we talked about before when we did podcasts before this one, where we talked about convenience and compliance. So like the convenience leads to your compliance. Well, like it's kind of like in Rome when they gave them bread and then they gave them entertainment. Entertain them, feed them, and they'll comply. So it cost the empire very little to do these gladiator shows and have the Colosseum and throw bread at the crowd and make them think, oh my God, our rulers are great people. They give us free entertainment and free food. So what do you think fast food and Netflix is today? That's the same shit. And it's basically free. It's not totally free, but it's damn cheap, you know? And so they're feeding us and entertaining us so that we comply. They want us just comfortable and compliant so that we can continue to do what is serving them. And I used to think it was things like they needed us for tax reasons or this or that, but I'm starting to realize that we pose a threat to them. That's actually what I think it is I think there's a deeper story going on where it's a spiritual type of war, and these demonic dark forces are compelling these people who are doing the controlling to try to keep us in a state of forgetfulness and compliance and comfort so that we sit there and forget what we're capable of and then just die off and stay quiet or sedated. That's kind of where they want us. They want us in a state of sedation. And most likely also, what's the word? Not reproducing. Like they don't want us to keep bringing more children in, because if we all die off and stay, then they're in full control, right? But then what do they get? Like, I mean, I don't even know. That's why I say, like, don't worry about anything and that there's whatever. Because it's like, what do they get? What do they get? Like, so then they get the world, and then we're all dead and gone and in some other spirit realm, and then they're all like sitting here like a bunch of lunatics, eating at each other and warring with each other and toxifying the land and living in misery. Like, what are they getting? They're getting nothing. And I've talked about this with the idea of war, like this stuff I've been witnessing in Ukraine and stuff, and how I have this girlfriend who lives in Ukraine and has watched her entire city turn to just what it is today, and like she understandably so hates Russians, right? But I'm like trying to explain to her, because I say to her, I'm like, no one is winning except for these people who are like, they think they're winning because that they're getting more control and they're getting the resources and they're getting the land, right? That's what they're getting. But like no one's really winning.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think that this is where we have been falsely guided for millennia, by whoever's been in control. I mean, now we call it global governments. Back then, it was still whoever was dominating. And this is where, you mentioned that. And I mean, it is crazy that I really do believe this depopulation agenda is in full effect, and the transhumanist agenda. And I'm left with the question that you raised at the beginning when we started. What do they get out of it? Like, if we're all killing each other and everyone's sick and humans can't even reproduce, these magical beings that we truly are. I mean, we are fucking amazing. Humans are amazing. We have so much potential that when look out, because when we wake everything up, I mean, I think we activate all these superpowers. I really do. I mean, telepathy being one of them. But then enter the transhumanist agenda, where you're merging the computers with our brains, which is happening. And I think it's happening with our phones already. I mean, I'm like terrified of this. I should use the word again, but I mean, really, I'm like, I don't want the iPhone 17 because I feel like it's going to, I don't know, there's going to be some whole other wave of potential frequencies that's going to infiltrate my cells, right? Oh my gosh, I want a flip phone. Or how about no phone? But really, what are they left with when the humanity is no longer even human? And I guess robots can suffer too. I guess when you merge human with robot, with AI with humanity, that there's still all this suffering and trauma and the energetics of victim and perpetrator. Is that what they sustain on? Because I just don't understand their logic in the end game. And this is why I truly believe, going back to Star Wars, it is a galactic battle. And I know we've talked about this on the previous podcast, that there are multitude of entities and beings in our galaxy, in our universe, in the multiverse. And I mean, there literally is good and evil. And I don't necessarily think it's light and dark. I think that we conceptualize it that way because we live in a dualistic reality, boy girl, and night and day, yin yang, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think that dark translates to bad. I mean, just going back to the cave analogy, how much illumination comes from being in the darkness, and that the darkness itself isn't evil. In fact, the evil doers are in the light. I mean, they're in plain sight. Everything they do, they are telling us, they are showing us. They are not hiding in the shadows. And when you really wake up and you see it, I mean, it is in plain view. What's in the darkness is our internal light. And that is what I've come to understand. I mean, really, we talked about the yin yang on this podcast as well. And I mean, I see it in a totally different way now. It's like it's all starting to come together and make sense. But that's where I do think it is our duty to help each other along the way. If we really are here to walk each other home, if you see someone stumbling to a bar to order more drinks, what if we could circumnavigate that experience with them, take them by the arm and say, let's go sit on a park bench, drink some water, and talk through what's going on in your life? Because that's the thing. We think we need, like our kids, they need to experience their own trauma to learn. They have to fall off the bike. To some extent, yes, there's a survival piece that we have to go through, climbing up something to fall down, right? Pedaling on something to fall off. And that teaches us how to do it successfully. But I don't know. I mean, to what extent do we need to continue perpetuating these age-old lessons that we've all gone through? I mean, pick up a book and read someone else's mistakes, and I'm listening, right? I'm at the point where I'm listening. I'm done. I don't want to keep making mistakes. So I do think that we can interrupt their lesson learning journey to some extent. Some of
Oh,
it's karma. We can't
yeah.
interfere with that.
No, 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 we absolutely can. But I think that the path to doing that is, and I fall in this trap, is to not be the preacher, right? Is to be the teacher in your own path. So they look at you and then they ask questions and then you answer from their questions. That's the only way that it's ever worked for me, is like they've had to like witness and see me. Like, why do you wake up and you're not so tired? Why are you able to go for your jog every day and not skip? Why are you able to get your work done and not be late on that and build a company with more clients? Why are you able to do all that? Oh, well, I'm so happy you asked because I love talking and I love sharing. So then I can open the floodgates, but they have to be ready. They have to be ready and they have to ask. And it's really more important for us to keep opening. So, Brog, you mentioned something earlier about you didn't say these words, but these words are describe what you were saying, which is something Guru Prem says. We're all beginners at our next step. So we're all there. So they might look like they're just light years behind us because they're like still falling off their bicycles because they haven't learned to ride a bike, but they're a beginner at their next step, just like we're beginners at our next step. And we have to honor that. We can't say, hey, jump to my step, because a lot of disaster can happen from that. And I use an analogy sometimes of thinking of like a cup. And it's like God wants to fill your cup like beautifully, but you have cracks. You might have some cracks. So if you are trying to pour all this wonderful stuff into that kid who hasn't learned how to ride a bike yet, all this stuff about riding bikes, and they have all these cracks about it because they haven't really properly learned yet, then they will get smashed. The cup will break apart and it'll fall all over them. It'll be a bigger disaster than them just scraping their knee a couple times. So I do think it's really important to be careful there. And I think it's more important to really focus on our own stuff. What I'm a beginner. I'm still a beginner. I will always be a beginner until I'm out of this, whatever this is. So I'm a beginner at my next step. And what is that next step? I don't know. I have a lot of things I'm still curious about and I'm wondering about.
I agree with that. I think that's I think the more secure that I am in my own self, the less I have any need to actually try to intervene with someone else's, path. So I look at it as a very similar way is that I just do what I know to be true for myself and let people come, if ask questions if they want. Or if something, is kind of pushed in, brought into my path and it seems appropriate to sort of relate in on a very organic, natural level, then I will, or wait for someone to ask questions. But I think most of the missionary work, people going out to save other souls, to try and save others, is more about one's own inner security of if I can save them, then I'll feel more secure about myself. And I think the better way is, like you said, Scott, just to be, to live and your truest self, and to let, if there's someone else who wants to know about it, then let them, be generous.
Yeah, because when you're in flow, all the stuff happens automatically. And
Yeah.
one of these amazing friends I have, which I think you've met, Sibrog, because that's how I met Jim in the first place, was through this guy Jimmy. He
Mhm.
lives in full flow, and
Yeah.
he just floats around, and I've seen him save souls like he's an angel on earth. And
Yeah.
that just happens automatically to him. He's just walking around, being his bizarre self, and like just stopping a stranger on the street and wanting to hug them, and they're just suddenly crying and being like, I needed that so bad, and suddenly he's like best friends with them, and all this stuff happens because he's just flowing. And
Yeah.
this universe is so sophisticated. Like, it's very egotistical of us to think like, no, 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 I know how to fix it. I don't. What I need is more information on how to move to my next step. That's what I need. I don't need to focus on who's doing what and why it's all bad. And I naturally get called to sometimes that being part of my step. Like I've told you before, where I started to get really obsessed about the financial system and Bitcoin versus central banks. Like that's not something I've ever like wanted to know more about and wanted to be motivated. But that's been part of this. What is my next step? How do I help? What can I do? And I just am getting guided. So it's like you can get guided into things that are suddenly going to be very useful to people that you didn't come up with on your own. They just kind of flowed into you. And that person or that, I mean, Hilda, you're in a different experience with having children. So I'm sure there's a lot of natural flow states where your kids are going to ask questions and they're going to beautifully learn from your wisdom.
Well, and yeah, I think one of the things I'm finding as I mean, I've been a parent now for 14 years. The more I rectify within my experience, the more that I resolve karmically, the more that I unravel within myself, the more that I step into flow state and assimilate that throughout a day or throughout a week or whatever the commitment, however long I can stay in it. Um, it trickles down to my children. And I'll go back to the riding a bike experience because just this month, the 4-year-old, her cousin came over with a bike and she watches him ride a bike and he puts it down and she goes over to it. No one's watching. I mean, we're all talking. The adults are up on the porch. No one's like, she's not like, look at me. I'm going to try this cool thing. She just goes over and picks up the bike and gets on it and starts riding. And it doesn't have training wheels. And we're like, Mina's riding a bike. Like no one taught her. There was no adult mollycoddling, helicoptering, no helmet on. She just gets on the bike and she just starts biking around the roundabout. And now the almost 2-year-old is on his balance bike. He's turning 2 in November, and he fully rides the balance bike. It's totally steady with legs up and just stays. And it's so interesting how I noticed when he When he follows someone else on their bikes, he can steady the course. He keeps his stability. It's like there's a frame that locks him in. When he's on his own, he's a little bit more unsteady. So the lesson is we need each other. We serve as guides, as teachers, to your point, that when we can model flow state, when we can model and embrace, I have this high vibration, and it's not because I take this multivitamin or because I sweat every day, or it's all of it. It's my flow state, it's my connection with creator, whatever it is. People want to know more. So it's an inspiration. When we are able to maintain that and inspire others through embodied teaching. And I think that's the point you were making. But it is interesting to witness in my children that the more I'm able to resolve and not react, everybody's flow state comes into play. And it's so beautiful to witness.
I love that story. Thank you. And I think that the beauty of this platform that we're doing right now is exactly that kind of idea of like people can listen if they want to. And if this is not resonating with them, they don't have to listen. They can go and find the cocktail that works for them, like whatever that is. If it's a mixture of yoga teachers and whatever, or if it's preachers at a church, or if it's like a rabbi, whatever that mixture is going to be useful for you and your journey, that's wonderful. This is a stance of like us trying to connect and us trying to connect in a way that allows others to tune in if they choose to do so, and if it's something that resonates with them. So that's what I think is beautiful about it. And we naturally wanted to do this, and this is just something that's we've obviously had our experience on this thing, and we're still continuing. And we could talk openly about that. I mean, I don't know if you guys are comfortable with that, or if we should just kind
Oh,
of.
sure. We can talk about it.
I think listen, I'm all about openness and transparency. And I think like one of the things so if anyone's been watching since we were the other one, it's like
The other one.
the other one,
The other one.
when we were welcomed home together. The big deal for me was our prior guy, Jim. He had what I would consider a difficult time facing something in himself, which was so fascinating for all three of us to witness, and also very difficult for all three of us. And the way I think of it is he essentially just went on this whole meltdown course, and I was open to discussing it with you guys like this. I said, all right, let's talk about it on the next thing, and he didn't want to. So that's
That's what I said too. Immediately when, because one of the not complaints or criticisms that I've gotten about the podcast is that we've sort of talk in these ideal ways and less about our direct personal situations, which it does come in more and more. Hilda, you were just talking about your experience with your kids and all that stuff, and but I thought that, wow, what an amazing opportunity to apply what we're talking about, what we're idealizing in our own real world personal situation where there's something relational happening. There's friendships at stake. There's business at stake. There's our podcast at stake. Let's be real and talk about what's happening with us.
sure.
And that was my first response too. It's like, let's make a podcast about it. This is great. And then the answer was, nope, not interested. And so I was like, well, what do you have to hide? I was like, I'm willing to discuss every single little detail of the matter down to it. I have nothing to hide. I can expose everything and just talk about my perspective and nope,
So
no
let's
interest.
do it. Let's do it. Let's just give a little warning to the people. We'll probably spend the next like 30 minutes talking about something that they may not be interested in, which is what happened to Jim and why did he choose the name of the podcast. So, and if you don't feel like hearing that story, then thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week. But this will be us discussing that, and I think there's some things I would leave out because I just want to honor his privacy and what he is experiencing. I think I'll just say the things in a detailed way that doesn't have to expose necessarily what my belief system is about where he's at. I think that he is carrying a lot of heavy shame. And I think it comes from his generation of where he grew up and how he grew up. And I think that he has built a really spectacular denial system around that shame. And I think he is a brilliant mind creatively and spiritually. And I think he's really well guided by a lot of great systems, or whatever we call this realm that he's guided by, including his brother who's passed and all these people. And I think that he's using those wonderful tools to shield himself from his own pain and shame that's around this topic that he is in denial about. And I think that he was unfortunately dragging us into that. I had seen and sensed this in him pretty early on because I can feel that and I could feel it with him, but I didn't think it was any of my business, and I also didn't care as much. I was like, whatever. This we all carry weird shit, and we all have weird parts of our personalities, and we all have our own. I mean, I guarantee you, I have weird things and denial systems still going on in my brain and my lifestyle and whatever. So it's like, whatever. It's him. It's his life, and it's whatever he wants. However, then we got into an actual business deal. You, me, and Jim. You, Sabrag, myself, and Jim. And then it affected that specific business transaction where we had a contract, that contract wasn't fulfilled, and he started to completely dump it all on you. And I hadn't been discussing it with you, Sabrag, and I had no idea what your side of the story was, but he was like really, really, really turning on the Sabrag is bad guy. I am good guy. And so I
It's
just
all my fault.
and I could smell the thing that this was about, and I could smell it. And I was like, this is probably about that thing that I've sensed in him for a long time, which is this denial system and this thing that he carries shame about. And I think that it bled into this business deal. And I was like, I don't know. Then he proceeded to do that podcast with Hilda. I listened to it and I was like, this all is in that theme. It's all in the same theme. So I was like, I am, and this was still before I even discussed it with you, Sabrag. I was like, all right, I'm fully convinced that this intuition I have about Jim and this denial system he's in and this pain and this shame he has, I'm convinced of this. So I said to him, let's talk about it on the podcast or we need to pause the podcast. And he chose to not talk about it on the podcast. And not only that, he also decided to turn against me. And that's what people do when they're in very, very deep denial. Is if you try to hold up a mirror, they start pooping on the mirror instead of accepting it. So I feel like that was my perspective. What would you like to share?
Um, let's see. Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm deeply, deeply grateful to all that has transpired with him. I've never laughed more in my life. I mean, the level of hilarity that we experienced was otherworldly. Like I was knocked down literally on the ground with deep belly laughter because of the level of intricate precision of humor that I've never experienced in my life before. So there was so much good here at play. But the challenge was, I think, was what I would say is like muddied channels without being self-aware enough to know where there's clarity and where there's muddiness. So he was on a level of sort of his ego would basically convince him that he's 100% accurate in everything that he says or does or channels or brings in. And I always joke with him is like, you think you're 100%. I think it's more in the realm of 73.4%. That's my calculation. So I would always just like bring that in and he thought I was probably full of shit. And he was like, no, I'm 100%. And so I think it's the level of not being able to self-reflect and sort of self-calibrate where you think you're a sort of a kind of a godlike figure and not ever take anything in of self-reflection or transformation that maybe something in myself is off. And it's that level of kind of shame. And so I've also experienced there's a movie, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I saw it in a theater. My friend Stephen James Taylor composed the music for it. They did a screening of it. The director is Charles Barnett, I think, and it's called To Sleep with Anger. And I highly recommend watching it. I highly recommend watching it in a quiet, undistracted sort of cinematic setting because the pacing of it is just so, and basically what it is I mean I'll describe it. I don't want to ruin it for you, but I'm going to describe it anyway because I think it's important. Is there's this character, there's a family, and they have minor problems, family problems and all of that stuff, and things aren't going very well, but they're okay, but not great. And this character comes in, as a visitor and knocks on the door, and it's a someone from the other village where the mother grew up, and is like, I need a place to stay. I'm in town, and she welcomes him in. He's very charming and very courteous and all of that stuff. But there's just something a little bit eerie and creepy about him the whole time. He seems great, but you just can't quite put your finger on what it is that's all wrong. And eventually, by his presence, just like everything in the family goes to shit. Like everything just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then all of a sudden, he topples over and dies. And then all of a sudden, all of these problems that were there before actually are way better. So the family is ultimately closer than they ever were. They're more closer to themselves than they ever were, and they find a truer sense of love and connection. And so I've seen experienced that in my life. There's like these characters that seemingly good. They kind of come into my life, and then they stir things up, and they bring me to a place that I wouldn't have gotten to before, and then they combust like, at just the right time, like the perfect time. There's a self combustion mechanism, and I think that's kind of what I'm experiencing with him is that he came in, and there's so many things in my life now that I'm so grateful for. Being with you two here right now, I mean, he facilitated all of that completely. Being where I am in this life right now, I'm amazed, and I wouldn't have been happening with him. And then bam, combustion, and that energy, that force is not necessary anymore. And it was literally like it was overnight. It was on one day. It was like, Subrog, you're the greatest. I want to do everything. I want you to be here. I want to support you in this. I want And then like a couple weeks later, it was like, you're a child molester. You're a murderess. You are like, it's like the worst things that you could possibly say about. I want to steal your business away from you. I want to take that away. Everything that you're doing, you're just completely, essentially evil.
Well, I want to
And
thank you for bringing that up because that's very revealing. And I didn't want to get
yeah,
too many details, but I'm glad you kind of opened that up because I wanted to add to that, not just you're a child molester, but you molested our close friends
yeah,
who I've, are very important to me. And he made those
yeah.
accusations about you to me as though it was fact, like you were saying so comically, 100% accurate. Sure, Jim.
And talk to them about it, right? I mean, they brought it up. He messaged them.
Oh
From
yeah.
I haven't.
Oh yeah. I get messages from, well, we'll say it like, well, I don't want to say actually their
We don't
name.
have to,
Yeah, let's not say their names.
no.
But I would get a message from one of them and be like, yeah, Jim left me like a 30-minute voice text about this. And
Oh wow, 30 minutes. Oh my God, 30 minutes.
yeah.
Wow,
And
crazy.
so yeah, he made those insane accusations about you, and then and my perspective was similar to yours, Sabrog, where it was everything was positive about you, and then
Yeah.
suddenly, no, Sabrog's a murderer, a child molester, and he was saying to me, Scott, you need to take his business. We're gonna go to court. We have it all, and he always say Jeff. Jeff tells me, that we have this case in the bag. And then, of course, my response was like, "What are you? I'm never going to court against Sabrog. Like, this is you're being totally crazy." And so I'm glad you brought that up because it's hard to speak about these details because they are so absurd and so harsh and so like chalk scratching, but like chalkboard scratching, but it's real and it's true. And he did that. And it's kind of important to just say that. Go ahead, Hilda.
So I just want to pinpoint how I think incredibly valuable this lesson has been. What I have taken away from this whole experience, and of course, I was a little bit on the outside because I'm not part of the business deal, but I'm part of the podcast and was part of all of this on the fray. And of course, the amount of communication from Jim about you, Scott, and about you, Sabrog, and the words and the accusations, which I just felt, God, this is not at all a higher conscious way of speaking about another human. Certainly not one that you've loved and who have we, these are really intimate interactions that we have on these podcasts. And it's incredibly, heart connected and integrated in all of our lives. And the side note thread that we've had in WhatsApp, so much value and beauty and love and heart pouring into this collective relationship. So at first, it triggered anger in me and confusion But then the valuable lesson was my discernment rocks. I knew, and I said to you, Scott, there's something juvenile about the way Jim is acting. There's something juvenile, and I didn't understand what it was. I didn't really know what that meant, but I just knew this. It's like someone throwing a tantrum, someone throwing a fit, and I didn't know what the fit was about. And it really wasn't my business to dig, but it was like, dude, whoa, this is really, really wild. But then to see how he architectured, designed this narrative around both of you to protect and guard whatever it is he's keeping hidden and doesn't want to face in his own life. And I saw that this is really what humans do. This is what people do in every realm and facet of life, from believing the Democrats or the Republicans or the COVID shot will save me or it was a scam or whatever the message is. We have this incredible power within us to believe the lie that we construct. And I think that Jim and many brilliant minds, they're the most dangerous ones because they're so spot on when he is in his light and it aligned with that divinity within him. My God, is he an incredible teacher and has so much wisdom to share and bestow upon us. And his life experiences are like mind blowing. They're so cool. His journey, his path, are absolutely movie worthy. But the power of that kind of a mind to construct a narrative, and then to pull other people into that's when I got really angry because I felt like the manipulation was not okay. But it made me see all other areas in my life of where this exact play out is happening.
Yeah, exactly, Hilda. And
It
so,
seems to me like I mean, I'm not a mental health professional. I can't make a diagnosis, but from what I understand, it seems like kind of a bipolar sort of disorder sort of thing, where on one hand you're an extremely high functioning, amazing, powerful light being. On the other hand, you're sort of like a force of evil, and you can, you know, navigate to each of those extremes at and without any sense of there's no control over it, essentially.
I don't know. Yeah, because we're none of us are psychologists, but
Yeah,
I what I do sense and sensed for a long time before it became my business, because I didn't want it to be my business, because this is like personal stuff for him, but it became my business as soon as money was involved and contracts were involved, is I think it's just a big, just glob of shame
yeah,
that he has used his incredible skills, his incredible creativity, his incredible spirituality to dance around and create a world around so he doesn't have to face it. And I think that there were cracks in that story all along, and they were leaking out all the time. And it came up with his contract with Jin. You remember Sabrog? We had a
yep.
contract with Jin,
Hmm.
and suddenly all that fell apart. And like I had to like have this money transferred out of Jin's account, and all of this. And so I was like, what? This kind of seems related. And it turns out it was,
It was very related. Very.
which is
Yeah,
amazing because I had the sense it was. But
yeah,
again, back then, still the money was fine. The contract was still working, it was adjusted. And I was like, all right, still none of my business because it's working and it's fine. As long as things were functioning, I was like, whatever. Like, this is like
yeah,
weird, but if it's managing and it's happening and it's smooth, like enough, like I'm not going to make an issue out of it. And then came this. This was the suddenly Sabrog is this like evil entity on the world, and I need to be prepared for him to cut us up into little pieces. And Charlie's very concerned, and all these like insane stories. And then I'm like, okay, this is the same thing that came up with
yeah,
Jin, and that I felt in other rants of his that have been on the similar topic, where he's like said things like this. And I was like, all right, this is all part of the same story. This is this glob of shame that he doesn't want to face or expose because it's really sensitive for him. It's
yeah,
like surprisingly sensitive because
yeah,
he's this guy who says like everything's cool and like I'm not human and I'm not from this timeline and I've got it all figured out and I'm guided by spirit and I can find honey in a dumpster because my dead brother tells me that. So it's like, holy shit, this guy's like legit. And then, but somehow he can't figure out how to just simply do what is in basic psychology, like here's this glob of shame that I feel embarrassed about and I don't like about myself. And it hurts to have people see it and to know it. So I'm going to define it for you. And if you are ever outside of that definition, you're a murderer, child molester, or you're whatever. Pick whatever you want. I know he's done his own smearing about me ever since I reflected back to him what I
Oh,
saw. And it's funny, Sabra, because even before you revealed to me your side of the story, which ended up being completely in alignment with the truth I was feeling,
yeah.
he was like, he was trying to say all these stories about you. And Hilda, you were on this text thread with us. I said to him, I was just so simple. I was like, Jim, I don't believe you. I'm like, I can feel the energy. And when you go on your long 6 minute voice text rants, and I can feel it's really coming through from like a channeling and it's sincere and it's like, wow. And the only flag I ever had about those channelings was similar to what you just revealed now, Sarag, which I didn't know this joke you had with him, the 73% thing. Is that I said sometimes he was a little too certain about his stances on stuff. So that was the only red flag I ever had whenever he went on those rants. But I never felt the energy that I felt when he'd go on these other rants about this shame center.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's something super off. And I even got into little quarrels with him back then before it became my business, where he would push back and become very like not the Jim we know. And so I don't know about the bipolar part, but I more see a very clear thing that he wants the entire world to be a certain way instead of just facing the thing, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, no, like I'm not drinking coffee. The whole world thinks this is coffee, but they're wrong. It's cranberry juice. And it's like, holy shit, man, it's that big. And he's that connected and powerful and creative and interesting and fascinating that he really almost can pull that off. But he couldn't with me,
Mm.
thanks to God or whatever. I'm not some genius at all. I consider myself not that smart, but like I could feel it. I could just feel it. It was like, this is
Yeah.
off and strange.
Mm.
I've sort of grown up thinking, or up until now, that it's part of life in human relationships that there's always going to be something that's a little bit off, and part of experiencing life and part of all of this is just to sort of navigate those things. And true love is just sort of seeing beyond and about like the anything like these faults and all of that kind of thing. And what I'm getting now, and I think it's more going to be true, going to be more true as we enter this sort of new vibrational field of true harmony and clarity and resonance and authentic human relationship, is that we'll find ourselves actually that we cannot operate in a sort of a red flaggy situation where we're having to overlook stuff. It's just like we have to come to our relationships, creative, business, friends, romantic, everything with full integrity and just full power, like from top to bottom. And we can do that now. Our channels are awakening, our consciousness is awakening, and all of that stuff. And those kinds of relationships, which are not like that, which there's toxicity and all that, they'll clear out just on their own accord. And I think that's kind of what happened. It was like it got to a point where there's just hypertoxicity, and the purity of the light, the purity of the intention, the purity of the love, just sort of cleared it out. It's like, okay, that's too, you know, that's not of the vibration where we're going to now, and it just sort of resolved itself.
Yeah,
And
but so I try always to find a way to be friends with people no matter what. Like I make the
yeah,
joke, I'll be friends with somebody who tried to murder me. Like I'll
yeah,
be friends with them. Like, hey, that was weird. Remember the time you tried to stab me? And then we'll laugh about it and like move forward. Like it's not a big deal to me if we can reach a level of communication again
yeah,
that's not going to be censored. So the thing is,
yeah.
I just don't want to deal with censorship. I want
Mm,
pure, like I want to just flow and like just talk from the heart. And I don't want to deal with, oh, I can't talk about light bulbs because remember he has that trauma with light bulbs, and now he's going to start yelling at me because I said the word light bulb. So I want to get through that. I want to get through that so then we can talk about light
yeah,
bulbs and you won't try to kill me next time. So like we can just get past that part. Okay, so we recognize it's this trauma from your childhood and you had this whole thing and that's what made you want to stab me. And okay, cool. Now we're moving past that. Now we'll move forward. So that's what I was interested with Jim. I was like, all right, cool. We've recognized there is this thing and it is huge. It is for him, it's a world. And I understand trauma. There's things that I have that are very activating. And when you're in a relationship with someone like I have with my girlfriend, there are things like they get super like, whoa, that's not the normal Scott. Where's this coming from? Oh, okay, let's learn about this. But, and that's what I wanted to give him the opportunity for. I was like, okay, we've recognized this big thing. It's a really big deal to you, Jim. Let's talk through it on the podcast. I'm all about transparency. I'm all about working through stuff. But that's where I think the block happened. He's unwilling to see it and talk through it. So what that means is it's either we move forward in a censored fashion where we just pretend that that whole glob doesn't exist and we just keep tiptoeing around it and never say the word light bulb or whatever. I just made that one up, you know? So we just have to like live in this false universe where the cornucopia is never existed. Okay, fine. So we're just sitting there doing that the whole time. And then it just, I can't, that's where I draw the line. I can't live in this censored way. I can't live in this like false, like tiptoeing bullshit. I'm like,
Mm,
okay, we've identified something. Let's work through it so that we can avoid the what you described as toxic because he really did. He started firing off all the ammunition. It's like he tried destroying your name, Sabrog. He tried destroying me with Hilda because he wants us destroyed rather than talking through it. That's all. That's how big a deal this
yeah.
is to him. He was ready to just completely destroy everything versus just imagine being inside of him. That is so tragic. You have something so big inside of you, you'd rather destroy everything than face it. So that's just unusable for me. That's not until he's ready to be like, damn, that was crazy. I've done a lot of soul searching and however he did it. And he's like, now let's talk through it. We can't continue with him.
No.
This literally comes back to something else you said at the beginning. The deep state controllers, whatever, whoever it is, the reptilians, whoever's in charge, um, that they don't want to face the light. If they were to go inside and see how magnificent that potential is, and I'm not sure that's true with the reptilians, um, but it's just so fascinating to me how we really are the microcosm of the macrocosm, and how our little podcast and the Welcome Time Traveler really was the microcosm of the macrocosm.
Mm,
And it's so beautiful and so poetic in a way that it really comes back to this ultimate, I don't know if it's fear or if it's just resistance or what it is, but that block to seeing within and facing, I mean, in full transparency. Because when you do and you surrender to the light, oh my God.
Oh my
Oh,
God, it's heavenly, but it's also so crazy. And I think what's interesting with Jim is this thing that he's carrying shame about to us seems really light, especially the world we live in today. It's like, no big deal. Like, let's talk it through it. That's really not a big deal. But to him, think about how heavy it is.
yeah.
protect at all costs.
Protect at all costs. And that's what's interesting about the macrocosm is to these reptilians or whoever they are, this thing that we think is like, dude, just relax. Like, why can't we all just chill on a beach and drink coconut water and like enjoy the tropical fish? You know, like that's how we think. But they're like, it's as heavy as this thing is to Jim. It's like, no, no, no. I would rather obliterate the planet Earth than face whatever this thing is that I have to go, which is the dark forest. They have a journey. They have to cross through the dark cave to get to the light. That we're like, you know, I'm not saying we are better, you know, because again, I probably have all sorts of things that are little ticking time bombs, and I face them all the time. When even especially in relationships, they bring them up. But we've done certain crossings of caves, and it's important to recognize that even if it's to us like saying, well, hey, why can't you just chill on a beach with coconut water? That's how it feels like to us. To them, it's like we're saying, hey, why can't you cross this terrifying cave that is like the most dooming, scary thing you've ever seen in your life? Why can't you just cross over it so you can lay on a beach with me and not feel anxiety? That's like telling somebody, yeah, don't feel anxiety, go to bed. And they're like, what? I can't go to sleep, man. Like I have sleepless nights. I need pharmaceuticals for it because they have a lot of stuff going on. So we have to respect, Hilda, with you like saying you felt that anger, I feel it too. I felt a lot of anger towards Jim, and that anger for a man a lot of times goes towards, well, do I fire back? Is it a counter strike? Like, he's striking me, do I counter strike? But to him, it's so absurd. I mean, this whole thing with Jim is so absurd to me, because to me, it's not a grand scale thing. I've always considered this podcast a really nice thing, and like, I think he's an interesting guy, and it was cool that I thought to invite you, Hilda, because you're so on topic and you started seeing us, and I love you, Sabrog, and it's just cool. But like, this isn't like I don't know. To me, this isn't like my life's work, and it's like not this huge thing. So it's like Jim was always this like side character to me. So I'm like not even interested in the Counter Strike with him. I'm just more like, what a ridiculous, insane thing that I'm dealing with right now, and how absurd this all turned when I was just somebody who, in my perspective, was trying to donate my time and donate my money and try to like uplift this man who has a lot of creativity and a lot of interesting insight. And I thought, wow, like I want to be a part of sharing this to the world, and like, and then to turn it into this like, oh no, I'm just like, what? So I don't in my mind get too angry or think in terms of Counter Strike or like, how do I look at him as not really a threat, and I look at him more with compassion. And I had a weird download the other day where I was dealing with my own life stuff, because there's so many. What I guess I'm trying to say is there's so many other things in my life that are bigger and more important to me than this, like, whatever is going on with Jim. And I was dealing with all that, and somehow, like, I got a little weird channel from Jim where he was helping me in it, like his spirit and I was like, well, that's nice, Jim. Even though you're like attacking me and all this stuff, you still have some consciousness to spare to try to alleviate some anxiety I have about this other topic. And I got this insight, like he really does have this want to be a part of our lifting. He wants to be the thing that we saw in him. He wants to love us. He wants to be a part of like helping society and getting people to see the light. And he really does. And he even wants me. Like I got almost like emotional. Like I was like, wow, like I bet you if I was tragically in the hospital or something, he would come and he would want to be a healing force in that. So that's what's so beautiful. I don't get like mad at him. I'm like, wow, how sad that he can't do what he wants because he's so unbelievably blocked by this inner force that he doesn't want to face. So my message to him is, Jim, you can't do these things that you want. In my worldview, you cannot even accomplish any of these things that you want until you face this thing, this deep, dark shame that you have
Maybe,
about.
maybe that goes back to that cave metaphor we were talking about at the beginning. Is like he's got to this end of the cave where it just seems completely unpassable, like, and has no idea how to pass. So he's just staying and keeps pushing up against it, and the only way that it will continue is just to face that sort of infinite darkness that he's feeling inside of him.
Yep.
I do believe. I mean, when I lived with him for months. I mean, his everything he would always repeat to me is like all the stuff that we're doing, all the music, all this stuff is just to get people to breathe together. He had very pure intentions in that regard, and I think he does genuinely want to help. I mean, his last message to me was something about Sabrag. What about the songs? And I was like, well, and then he said something about I'm don't think about it too much. I'm here to open your heart center or something like I'm here for your to get you out of your mind and into your heart, and that's
Yeah.
what he thinks that he's doing.
He does,
And
but the danger in that, Savrog, is he's doing this thing that there's this character on the cartoon BoJack Horseman. I keep bringing up cartoons. All I do is watch cartoons, and she is like so unwilling to kind of like go through her normal facing stuff about herself. So she becomes this like overachiever and doing all this stuff, keeping herself busy and helping people, helping people, helping people, all to avoid kind of like what she actually has to do, which is back to this microcosm, macrocosm thing. You have to like do it yourself to you and your life in order for the rest to happen. And so as much as his intentions are so beautiful, and his voice is, this is the tragedy in it all, is his voice is so healing and beautiful, and his song, his Jesus song, his mantra songs, they're so powerful. And my first response to him ever was, these are songs that are going to save lives, but they will not until he gets past this. And this
Yeah.
is now back to the bicycle thing. He's got to go fall off the bicycle, and he's got to go tumble and fall, and he can't get any of our help until he asks for it.
Yeah.
He has to come up to us and say, I feel this deep shame about this part of my life. It is so different for me because of how I grew up, and this is what my dad was like, and this is what society was like, and this is why I can't face this part of myself, and I need your help. Like tell me how can I face this? Then we can have beautiful open conversations and start moving forward. We can even start up the podcast again with him. If he starts, first step into recovery, right, is recognizing you have a problem. So it just, as beautiful as that story is, Sabrag, about him saying that to you, it's like, but that's like the drug addict coming back to you being like, I'm clean and sober now. And
Right.
it's like, yeah, sure,
Nope.
maybe for a week until you're challenged again, until
Yeah.
that thing that shows up that then makes you go do the heroin or drink the alcohol or whatever it is that's your vice that gets you through this. And for him, it's this bizarre cycle of denial systems that causes problems. This wouldn't even be my business if it didn't become my business. It caused
Yeah.
this big issue in our business transaction, and that's why I
Yeah.
finally made it my business, and that's why I finally
Yeah.
voiced my opinion, and that's why I finally had to challenge him on it, because it actually affected my money, my time, my all of it. So I'm just like, dude, all right, I got to face this. It's my business now. And he couldn't handle it. He just could not handle that.
Mm.
I'm excited to see what happens now with our contract as we decide to complete it in a new way, because I feel something got opened up, and the experiences that I was having in terms of vibrational transformation inside and outside going through this were very profound. And there is an alchemical process going on, I believe, here. And I think what is ultimately going to come out of this is going to be very, very powerful. It's just going to turn out a little bit different. And I guess that my inner journey with it is like, do I just like scrap it and start fresh and say, hey, because basically the contract was we're going to create 7 songs together. You've supported us financially for a number of months for living expenses and equipment and all of that kind of thing, and we're going to even make a documentary about our lifestyle together, our relationships, and which we did. I mean, we had a lot of videos there that were just us interacting in our normal day-to-day social life, just kind of playing and joking and talking and being spontaneous, which were very interesting, I thought. And we had like these little episodes where we would just be spontaneously, we'd be walking through Costco, or we'd be cooking something, or just somewhere, and be just talking, interacting, and joking, and being weird. And at the end, then we do some ohms together. We breathe together, and we do some ohms together. So we had this like little series of things like that. So there was a whole thing that was happening. And so I've created these materials. I actually, even before, I have like 8 songs, which have a really, really solid foundation. And most of them are his songs, which he's had these pop songs he's collected for, 40 years now. One of them was written basically around my birthday and recorded around my birthday in 1983. And that was going to be our main song that we came out with. And he was like, I couldn't come out with these songs until this new harmonic structure was there. So now all the weird stuff is like, okay, we have all of this amazing material that's been generated, but it's sort of tainted like by this story, by this voice, and a lot of them were mantra songs too. It's like healing, and it's like I can't meditate anymore to that voice and that intention.
Yeah, unfortunately,
And
the answer is for that specific stuff,
yeah,
you just have to wait until he's healed and ready
yeah,
to take the first step. And in the meantime, as far as business and contract, like whatever, we'll redefine whatever ends up manifesting as being something that's solid and makes sense for
yeah,
us. But but as far as stuff that involves his voice, his stuff, it's just
yeah,
on hold in perpetuity until he decides that he's ready to take the first step into a honest, open, transparent, beautiful, harmonic connection with us. And
yeah.
if it's not, then those are shelved. And I trust God and God's time. It's going to be released when it's meant to be released.
My last words to him were I mean I just told him I can no longer participate because of the inappropriate things he said about me, etc. And I said, however, my ears and heart remain open, but very cautious.
Yeah,
So, and
beautifully
Hilda
said.
has to go. She's sending messages.
Oh,
Bye, Hilda.
bye, Hilda. I think one last thing. Let's just say some love to Jim, and we're
Yes.
sending it out.
Yes, love
Love,
to Jim very much and
love to Jim,
gratitude.
and
Love, gratitude, respect.
we'll
Keep.
see him when he's ready.
Yeah. Oh,
All
what
right,
helped
guys.
us all.
Thank you all.